Brothers and sisters, you're tuned into another episode of the Gospel of Malcolm X podcast. I am your host, Brother Eric. As always, it is my pleasure to be back and in the studio with you once again. So today's episode, first I want to do as I always do and give a shout out to all of the brothers and sisters that show your love and support to the Gospel of Malcolm X podcast. I want to give a special shout out to the people that sent me that. Couple of people sent me that video. Brother Nat comes to mind, though. There's a brother that did a video about Brother Malcolm recently. I haven't had time to really sit down and whatever, and I'm not going to promote it here. But I do want to cover this particular movie or film study or what have you, because it's going to have, I guess, a wider reach than that film. But I did get your messages, and I just, for some reason, I just could not get into that video. I may address it at some point, but I just couldn't get into it. So, I watched the first 2 episodes of this HULU special, and there's just so many problematic things about it. So I'm going to review the first 2 episodes now, and if I watch the second 2 episodes, I will review those next. So, this is a Hulu special produced by Disney, and it really lives up to, it's almost like what you would expect. It's almost as if they're showing Malcolm and Martin Luther King's story as if it is a Disney movie. And it is very fairy tale-ish. There's a lot of untruths mixed into their story. And this is why it's important to take a hold of your story and make sure that you are telling your story. And that goes for Black people or any group of people. But what they've done with the story of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King in this presentation, I have to say it's disgusting to me. It's offensive, almost, the things that they've done with the story. They changed so many things and just basically told their own story. They just went away from what happened historically and just created their own narrative. And you guys know that in general, I'm not a fan of this whole genre of just making movies out of historical people, because I believe that it just over time devolves, and now we don't know the lies from the truth. And so I believe in sticking as closely to the truth as we possibly can. And when you get into storytelling, and the truth just gets lost in all of the storytelling. This is why if you guys ask me for movies in terms of learning about history or learning about Martin Luther King and what went down with Malcolm X, etc., I'm always going to point you into the realm of a documentary. Documentaries by people like the great Omar Shabazz, one of the brothers that is a mentor to me, makes great documentaries about Malcolm X. Even the Netflix special, as hard as I was on the Netflix special, I have more of an appreciation for the Netflix special than I do for this, because at least that was centered around truth and drew home a lot of truths. Despite the fact that I disagree with them trying to paint things a certain way in terms of the other people that were accused. Oh, by the way, let me mention, if you guys remember, speaking of the Netflix special, if you guys remember, they were in Newark. They were in Newark, New Jersey, where the killers that assassinated Malcolm, they came from Newark over the bridge to Harlem to assassinate Malcolm. And then now that temple that was in Newark was transformed from a Nation of Islam temple to a more Orthodox temple. But still, those guys that are in that temple were former members of the Nation of Islam. And a lot of them knew the guy who fired the shotgun at Malcolm X. And they were interviewed in that documentary, in that Netflix documentary. It looks like a lot of them were covering up the secret, etc. Anyway, the imam from that mosque that was formerly Mosque number 25 in Newark, New Jersey, the imam of that mosque was killed outside of that mosque. So I may, if I have time, I may read an article on that at the end of this presentation. But the imam of that mosque was killed outside of that mosque, and that's just crazy to me. That's just absolutely crazy. But that just goes to show you what has been connected to that mosque and that area, etc., for a long time. Now, they believe that what happened with him may be connected to family or something like that. I believe they're still investigating that, but it's still wild. So, back into getting into this movie. Movie starts off, you see Malcolm, and Malcolm he's being like, they're kind of like following Malcolm around the way that the press does. And they have this random scene where Malcolm starts talking about his butterfly collection. And you guys know I've been studying Malcolm X for the majority of my life now. And all of a sudden they just insert this thing in here about Malcolm X having a butterfly collection where he collects butterflies and likes to see them sprout into, likes to see caterpillars sprout into butterflies, etc. It's like these people are creating their own Malcolm X. Another thing I noted, that they went back, they added just a lot of extra dialogue between Malcolm and King, and which was weird. They went back and showed Malcolm's father being a Garveyite. On the Martin Luther King side, they showed where Martin Luther King's name was changed from Michael to Martin. Let me also say that I'm sure that there are a lot of historical things that was wrong on the Martin Luther King side, and that was interjected as well. And I just didn't catch them because I know a lot about Martin Luther King, obviously, but not as much as I know about Malcolm. So some of the things I may not have caught, but I'm sure that they were there too. So I'm going to be covering mainly the Malcolm side, but they went back and forth. They went back and forth showing Malcolm and Martin, and they kept flip-flopping, showing the parallels of their lives. And at some points that was interesting, and at some points you can tell that they were just making a story. Some of it being real, some of it being fake. But whenever you mix truth with falsehood, it automatically makes it falsehood. If you guys ever study coding, I'm studying some coding now. And one of the principles of coding in computer science, there's a principle called Boolean theory. And it talks about true and false. Basically, the answers in Boolean theory are true and false. So if you have an equation where there's two principles and it's true and false, then it's automatically false. Anytime that there's true and false, it automatically makes the statement false. And this is how computers even read and operate. So scientifically, this is like computer science stuff, a basic computer science principle. Anytime there's true and false, there's false. So they also depicted Malcolm's father as very abusive. And they had a inaccurate description of his father's demise. I'm not saying that Malcolm's father was not abusive, but I think the depiction in there at the time that it happened and the way that they showed it was definitely inaccurate. And I don't even know to the extent of Malcolm's father's abusiveness or where that was covered. I'm not necessarily having a problem with them necessarily showing him as abusive, but the way that they showed it in that scene, I know for sure that part was inaccurate. The way that they depicted Malcolm's father's demise, where it's like basically they came and they tried to burn Malcolm's house down, and then all of a sudden Malcolm's father marched out and he met his demise, that was inaccurate. Oh, the depiction of Ella was just completely disrespectful. I've talked about Malcolm's older sister Ella on this show several times. I've even played some clips from Ella. Ella was like a mother figure to Malcolm. She was a matriarch, an incredible woman, absolutely incredible woman. And sorry about that. So they showed Ella like as a thief, like basically she was stealing pictures. They showed Ella giving Malcolm alcohol. They showed Ella just doing like teaching Malcolm how to steal and corrupting him, etc. When actually she was a force in his life that was actually doing the exact opposite. And it was really weird. Another thing that I noted, just something that is just funny, is that they have like the weirdest wigs in this joint. Tyler Perry level wigs with conch or whatever. Just really cheaply made. When Malcolm went to jail, they had a representation of like the prayer rugs thing, which would have been inaccurate for the Nation of Islam, especially at that time. That's a more of an Orthodox Islam type of thing. Another inaccurate representation. They showed a lot of older people in the nation when really the nation was a street movement, sort of like what the 5%ers became. So this was like a back alley religion. They showed Malcolm and Evelyn, and I'm going to get back into that part. They showed Martin Luther King Sr. dissing Coretta Scott King, almost like she wasn't fit to be Martin's wife, which I don't know if that was historically accurate or not, but to me that part felt, because like I said, I'm not as much up on game with the Martin Luther King stuff, but that part felt like it was written in. Yeah, it felt like it was written in, but it could have some truth to it, but you never know what's written in and what's not. And so this is basically the position that you guys are in when you guys don't know stuff about Malcolm and you're watching it, and then you guys send me a message and you start asking me, is such and such true or not? So that's kind of where I am with the Martin Luther King thing. When I'm watching Martin Luther King Sr. talk to Coretta Scott King crazy, like she's not fit to be Martin Luther King's wife, I'm not sure if that's an accurate depiction or not. And so now me, as a student of history, I'll go and do the research on it. Most people are not going to do the research on it, and they're just going to take that information and run with it, and it could be totally historically accurate. Another thing that they did that was terribly historically accurate was they made it out as if Malcolm rose up into power by replacing Reginald. I've talked about Malcolm's relationship with his brother Reginald on the show, and Reginald's fallout with the Nation of Islam. Reginald's fallout with the Nation of Islam was not only over Reginald committing an act of fornication. Reginald also accused Elijah Muhammad of committing fornication as well. In this particular film, they depict Reginald as the minister of Mosque number 7, and that basically Elijah Muhammad comes to Malcolm, tells Malcolm that he needs to get rid of Reginald for committing acts of fornication, and then Malcolm is going to take Reginald's position as the minister of Mosque number 7, basically painting Malcolm out to be somebody that snaked his brother and took over his role in the nation. Something that did not happen, was completely not true. Reginald was not the minister of Mosque number 7 at all. And they not only added Reginald in as a minister of Mosque number 7, but then they, on top of that, made it like they left out the fact that Reginald was really the first person to tell Malcolm that Elijah Muhammad was committing these acts of fornication himself. And we did whole shows about that and covered that over here. But Disney just invented this whole story of basically Malcolm snaking out his brother to take over this role in the nation. But on top of that, they left out the fact of what his brother was talking about. Another thing that made that scene worse, it made it so much worse, is that basically when Malcolm is having this conversation with Reginald and telling Reginald that he's going to be relieved of his duties, all of a sudden the FOI comes over and just ushers Reginald right on out. Like, brother Reginald, it's time for you to go. And then they kick him out, which is crazy. So another thing that I'm suspecting now that they're going to show, now that they're going to show, so they have an extensive part on here with Malcolm and Evelyn, this whole Malcolm and Evelyn thing. Like, I haven't seen Betty be introduced into the show yet. I've only watched the first 2 episodes. And so hopefully when I watch the next 2 episodes, I'll come back and I'll update you guys. So far, no Betty. At least, no, I'm sorry. So there's a little bit of Betty in the introduction scene, but then they go back. And so far there's no like Betty in the current timeline. So, but they keep showing Malcolm and Evelyn. And Evelyn was somebody that Malcolm was dealing with. She became one of the women that got impregnated by Elijah Muhammad. I think she had a couple of kids for Elijah Muhammad. So I think that that's where they're going to go with this. They're painting Evelyn, but there wasn't only Evelyn. There's another chick that Malcolm was dealing with named Lucille. He got them jobs. This is real life now. He got them jobs out there. They were from Boston. He got them jobs out there being Elijah Muhammad's secretaries. And Elijah Muhammad impregnated them both. But not only did he impregnate them, he wasn't taking care of his children, which was problematic for Malcolm. And he felt bad about it because he got these chicks jobs out there. Elijah Muhammad knocked these chicks up and then wasn't taking care of his children. The bad part about that is that years later, about 20-something years later, after Malcolm died, Farrakhan paid these women to get on the stage and shit on Malcolm, which was crazy. And it was so crazy that the people that was there while they were talking actually ended up leaving out. And then Farrakhan was basically asking the people to stay. There's the videos online of the women basically coming back, pretending that they were Elijah's wives, even though they were never considered wives at the time. They were basically on stage lying. Looks like they were paid to pretty much be there. People were so disgusted by it that they started walking out, and then Farrakhan began to asking people to stay. Where does Farrakhan normally ever have to ask anyone to stay? This man is a charismatic speaker, but people were seeing through the bullshit that night. So I think that that's where they're going in the future episodes, with basically Malcolm's feelings being hurt over Elijah dealing with his ex, etc. That looks like the Disney plot that they are staring up here. That's what I see cooking. But so far, this movie is trash. If you have not seen it, I would advise you not to watch it. It is so many historical inaccuracies. You won't gain anything by watching this film. It will only make you more confused about what was happening. If you want to learn about Malcolm X during Black History Month or Martin Luther King, there's a good film on Hulu called MLK FBI. I'm going to review that next because I meant to do it around the time of King's birthday and I didn't get to it. But it's called MLK FBI. Watch that if you want to learn about MLK. For Malcolm X, you can watch the Netflix special on Malcolm X by the brother Abdul Rahman Muhammad, I believe his name is. You could watch the Who Killed Malcolm X on Netflix. You could watch any of Omar Shabazz DVDs. Go and watch the lectures by brother Zach Kondo. Those are on YouTube as well. Watch those things if you want to learn. You want to learn through film and actually educate yourself in terms of Malcolm's life, in terms of the assassination, his leadership, how he lived day to day, etc. Those are going to be good sources. Oh, 2 good books to read. If you don't want to watch film and you want to read books, 2 good books to read. Going to be by my brother Carl Evans. One is called The Judas Factor. And that is an excellent book. The other book is called The Messenger, which is a biography of Elijah Muhammad, but there's a lot of good things in there about Malcolm X, and you can learn about the whole situation. So that's pretty much going to do it for me today, brothers and sisters. I appreciate you all for listening. I will, if I get to it, we'll watch the other 2 episodes of this trash and review it. Thank you for the brothers and sisters that sent me that other video. I didn't get a chance to watch it in its fullest. I tried to click through it, but I just couldn't get into it. I couldn't get into it. So I appreciate you all taking the time to listen. Always feel free to hit me up. I appreciate all of the love and support. Until the next episode of the Gospel of Malcolm X podcast, peace and love. All right. So I know I said it was out, but I needed to come back to address 2 different points. So the first is, I don't know if I completely displayed my frustration with the whole butterfly collection thing, because there's always these attempts in these movies. And it's the same thing that was done by Regina King in her movie A Night in Miami, to demasculinize Malcolm and to have Malcolm be presented as some type of gay wimp or etc. And I don't appreciate this whole butterfly thing. That was some very weird, whack, homo type, like that was just weird. And there's nothing about associated with Malcolm and a butterfly collection. Like if somebody collects butterflies, cool. That's like cool for them. But to write that into a script with Malcolm X and to associate that with Malcolm X is only an attempt to demasculinize Malcolm X, because we don't have a whole lot of masculine men that are in leadership roles today that can be thorough representatives of our black masculinity. And Malcolm X, he was that. And so there's always attempts with this type of thing, with the butterfly collection and other stories, etc., that I've covered here, to try to demasculinize or homonize, whatever words you want to use. And I really don't appreciate it. And it's when I saw that Disney was making this film, I already told my people that I already knew that it was going to be some problematic things about it. So none of this is surprising to me, but I don't know if I quite captured my disgust with it, because I find it completely disgusting. And the way that they did Ella was disgusting. The way that they with that also, those are the 2 most disgusting things. A lot of historical inaccuracies, but those 2 things in particular I found to be disgusting. The other thing that I wanted to cover was, I talked about the imam. Of course, I don't have the story up immediately, but I talked about the imam, and that was killed outside of that Newark mosque, the mosque where Malcolm's assassins came from. Like I said, it later became more orthodox. So they went from being a temple to being a mosque, etc. But they had 3 people that was arrested behind that the other day. And I think that one of the people may have been the imam's son. So give me just a second here. Pull up this thing. Okay. So the article here is from NBC News. It's called "The Son of Slain New Jersey Imam Arrested on Gun Charge." Abdush K. Sharif was arrested 3 weeks after his father was gunned down outside of a Newark mosque, but he has not been charged in the killing. This article is written by Rick Shapiro and Jonathan Dienst. The son of the imam, who was fatally shot outside of his mosque in Newark, New Jersey, has been arrested on a gun violation charge in Essex County, prosecutors said. Abdush K. Sharif, 36, was arrested at a home in Newark on Friday and charged with violating firearms regulations. He is being held at the Essex County Correctional Facility pending his detention hearing. According to the Essex County Prosecutor's Office, 2 other people who were with Sharif at the Newark residence, Kevin Rogers, 46, and Deshaun Kitchen, 49, were also arrested on gun charges. The investigation into the homicide of the Imam, Hassan Sharif, is active and ongoing, the office said in a statement. The NBC News has reported that detectives were investigating whether a family member was responsible for the killing. Law enforcement sources have said police are probing whether the son was involved in the crime. A spokesperson for the Essex County Prosecutor's Office said he had no comment beyond the statement. Attempts to reach an attorney for Sharif were not immediately successful. The killing of Hassan Sharif, a community leader who was known for feeding the needy and fighting gun violence, stunned the city and those who knew him well. A married father and avid boxer, Sharif had also worked as a Transportation Security Administration officer at Newark Liberty International Airport since 2006. So no doubt that this Imam definitely knew the killer of Malcolm X. Him being a boxer, the Imam of that mosque, I'm sure there was some connection there. And that Malcolm X's killer also opened up a boxing gym. So that connection stood out to me as well. So as this story develops, I will be following it more. But it looks like they believe that his family was involved in this. So I'm going to be looking to see what the motives were. Was it anything to do with taking over the mosque? Was it just an internal family beef, religious, et cetera, et cetera? So those are the two things I wanted to add to the episode. So yes, like I said before, definitely don't watch that movie. It's trash. And I wanted to give an update on that situation because I said I would read the article at the end. Well, once again, brothers and sisters, thanks for listening. Until the next episode of the Gospel of Malcolm X podcast, peace and love.